All right, people. This podcast, Pirate Life Radio, has been brought to you really in a huge part by Caveman Coffee. Because Jesus fucking Christ. Carlos, he drinks the shit straight out of the bottle. Like the way Nate Harris drinks it. I can't do it. That concentrate, god damn. I went 50-50 with mineral water and I got sprung. Oh, that right there. I got to use regular Caveman Coffee Nitro out of a can as a chaser. Because that's how I do it. I chase my caffeine with more caffeine. Anyway, if you don't know what I'm talking about, get your shit together and hit up cavemancoffee.com. Caveman Coffee is the best as far as, looking for whatever is at the pinnacle of your game is, I think, kind of where you want to look in your life. And that's what me and Keith and Lacey Mackey did with Caveman Coffee. We kind of looked towards the best in coffee, which we all loved, and like, how can we up our game with it? And so we went into MCT, we went into single estate coffee, we teamed up with Via Miriam and started doing these cold brews. Our roaster's a master roaster, David Sertain, one of the very best in the world, and with the plaques to prove it. And we got, really cool shit. We got brand new Pirate Life hats up, and if you don't know what that is, check it out. Get deep in it. Jump into your life, man. It's all about how to regain access and control in your life when it's really getting mitigated and eroded by every kind of corporate structure that you can see out there. And it's kind of what we started Pirate Life Incorporated against was that kind of thing, and the way it's kind of manifest. And the first thing that we're doing is with Caveman Coffee, and goddamn, it's the best. It is the very best. And I wanted to say that I like a lot of other shit. I like O'Hori's. You can find O'Hori's coffee. O'Hori's.com, I think, is their thing. God, they're great. They got some nice black, dark coffees. I'm a fan of coffee. I'm a fan of all that stuff. But Caveman Coffee is what Lacey and Keith and I started, and what we're keeping going, and that's what's keeping the fires burning over here. And it's certainly what's keeping us caffeinated. Check it out at Caveman Coffee Co. on Instagram and Twitter, and at cavemancoffee.com. You can find all you need there. Also, I want a big thanks to Undisputed Fitness. It's my gym that I own and where I come from, and my coaches, Lorenzo Hernandez. He teaches a great adaptive program there. We got, I believe, 4 athletes now in wheelchairs that are working out there on a regular basis. 5 now. 5 this just in. God damn, it's changing the world, man. It's a different day, man. The kind of inspiration and empowerment I get from the people that I get to be around is just fucking second to none. And I wish that the same for all of you. And that's what all my sponsors are like. That's what this podcast is like. That's what the people that are on it are like. I mean, I'm just trying to push that out as much as I can. So at Undisputed Fitness, you can find all that, and that's in Santa Fe, New Mexico. It's also where the first Caveman Coffee Cafe ever was developed. It's also where 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu happens there. Also strongman workouts and CrossFit, really headed up by Heather McKernan there. The strongman program is run by Nate Harris, who's also a brown belt and a killer in jiu-jitsu. Ruben Rivera runs the 10th Planet site up there. So you can find all of us on Instagram. I mean, we're easily found at Undisputed Fitness and at Undisputed Fit on Twitter. You can find them on my Instagram at Tait Fletcher. Yada, yada, yada. DeuceGym.com. Bears saying, man, I'm just saying, food for your soul, nourishment. Go there, read the blogs, look at the workouts, see what life can be like, man, because it's exceptional. This whole fucking gig is we're born to be exceptional. Good enough sucks. So let's get busy, motherfuckers. And that brings us into this goddamn podcast that I'm excited about. It's really, like, I don't really have fan moments with fighters at all, because that's where it is. But it's weird. Carlos and I, we didn't really mix and match or train together. Our fight careers kind of had gone in and out of each other for a long time, but to be able to sit and speak with them, which I'd never ever done before, one other occasion previous. But he's got a fight coming up with Robbie Lawler in 5 weeks from now on the recording of this. Robbie Lawler, one of the most winningest, badass motherfuckers in the UFC right now, holding the belt at 170, title fight. and Carlos, who's really become just a fantastic friend. And I love the guy. I love everything about him, man. I like more and more the more I know. It's like, and that's a fucking hero to have. Like, it's nice to see sports people out there in that realm and go, God damn, this is a fantastic human as well. And so I hope you like it, man. Natural born killer, Carlos Condit in the house, and enjoy this.
A big Tait Fletcher.
Powerful Tait Fletcher.
Is a real alpha male.
Weightlifter.
He's a stuntman.
Movie star.
Robust, enthusiastic individual.
He's huge, by the way. He's like a monster person.
One of the sweetest guys I know.
He's bigger than life.
Actor.
Entrepreneur.
A fighter.
The jiu-jitsu technician.
He's also bald and he has all these tattoos. He's just a big fucking man.
A man, a myth, a legend.
Tait Fletcher.
Tait Fletcher.
Tait Fletcher.
What's up, Tait Fletcher, you fat motherfucker?
Tait Fletcher. Tait Fletcher is
Tait Fletcher.
Teddy bear motherfucking Fletcher, ladies and gentlemen.
That's Tait Fletcher, everybody.
The great Tait Fletcher. Tait the animal Fletcher. Tait the savage Fletcher. Always moving. There's no stillness with Tait Fletcher. You will find no dust.
Tait Fletcher's in the house, ladies and gentlemen. He just said the word erection.
Tait Fletcher.
Tait Fletcher's in the fucking house. Tait Fletcher!
Tait really blasts out some serious hardcore truth bombs, and I think you're really going to enjoy it.
Welcome to Pirate Life Radio, man. Carlos, welcome, man. It's great to have you, and I've been eager for this conversation for a long time, and I'm wondering how can this happen? And then it just all kind of happens, and it's great to have you, man.
Yeah, dude, thanks for having me.
How many weeks out are you from your fight?
About 5, I think.
So you're feeling really good right now.
I am, absolutely.
What do you do differently? Like when you're coming into this, I know I've been it's a trip. Like I guess the first time I ever met you was at a casino way out west of town. What might have been one of the first
Sky City, maybe?
Sky City. That's where my first fight ever was. I think was out there, and there was all these flyers that had me, you, Diego, and Keith on them, I guess. It was a King of the Cage deal. It was I think you were 19 years old. That was around, like, you'd had a couple, 3 fights before then?
Sounds about right, yeah.
Yeah. Crazy, man. Mm-hmm. And looking at that and looking at, like, the whole launch of where this has all been, and then your, savagery throughout the WEC and it's kind of it's a trip to see all that. And, like, I think real turning points at different points watching you as an athlete. There's a lot of guys that stay monodimensional all the way through it, and then there's guys that you see around for a long time. Like those kinds of guys reign for a while, I think, and then it's like if you're not really pushing the envelope to get better in different ways or adopting different training styles, that doesn't really have legs. Mm-hmm. And you've seemed to have done that naturally and had different camps and different guys around you, different coaching structures and. Mm-hmm. Was all that stuff just a natural progression, or was that something that you looked at and you're like, I need to have a different camp now, or I need to have different training protocols, or I need to start moving and moving weights more into my life? Or
Well, I think it's a combination of things. I mean, at certain points in my career, I came to a point where I was like, well, you know what? This camp is no longer helping me grow. It's kind of stifling my progress. I need to go find something new. I went and actually got a chance to train with some really high-level athletes out in Arizona. I was training with.
I remember that.
The guys at Arizona Combat. So Ryan Bader, Aaron Simpson, these guys who had all come through the Arizona Wrestling Arizona State Wrestling program.
Kids kind of deal, right?
And so these guys were like high-level athletes. I had never really trained on a professional level. Like I had trained. With some really, really great coaches.
What a crazy thing to say, right?
But to see guys training as professional athletes as opposed to like just mixed martial arts guys who didn't necessarily live the lifestyle. I didn't necessarily live the lifestyle at the time.
Explain the difference.
I would go in and I was a fighter.
Like when you walked over and you're seeing Bader and these guys, what are they doing that's different that you're like, oh, that dude's different than any dude I ever trained with? Like how in what way?
The thing that really stands out in my mind is the consistency of their strength and conditioning program. They stayed in shape pretty much year round. They integrated their strength and conditioning into their into their overall program. With a great efficacy, and I had been told to do it. I had coaches telling me to do it, but I had never seen it in action. I had never seen people living this
Here's
lifestyle.
an example of how to go about put my food and put my diet and all that.
And since then, and I had kind of got on the diet kick, and learned to eat correctly at about 19 and dabbled a little bit in the strength and conditioning, but I was not consistent. Since then, since going out to Arizona and coming back, I have been consistent with that, and I've changed my lifestyle in a lot of different ways.
6 years ago, probably, right?
Yep, 7 maybe. Yeah, it's 6 or 7.
It's a while back.
Yeah.
Because I remember when you transitioned and came back into Albuquerque and into the gym at Greg's.
Mm-hmm.
Now you say you're like, because I feel like at different points I'm like right on with my diet and I'm right, like all that kind of stuff, and then that changes and I'm like, fuck, I didn't know what I didn't know kind of thing happens, and this whole world opens up. How has it changed from what, like when you're like, I'm on cue with my diet at 19 years old to right now where, I mean, it's got to be, you've had to have a bunch of different incarnations of that, what's a good diet throughout that conversation, right?
Oh yeah, without a doubt. I ate pretty shitty, especially when
Subway and chips. You're doing good, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh, for sure. And
I know, I get it. Like
I'm
staying out of McDonald's. Things are good.
Yeah, and doing that for a long time. I was still eating somewhat processed foods, but I was, really just focusing on my macros. Oh, I'm getting enough protein. I'm eating a ton of Triscuits, so I'm definitely getting my my carbohydrates
good
in.
long chain energy.
I'm drinking my V8 juice. I'm getting my vegetables in, but it was all still processed crap.
Right.
And slowly kind of realizing it doesn't have to come in a package, and
that's the trick, isn't it? It's like the package comes and you look and you're like, I don't want to think too much about my food. And you're like, oh, these nice people, they did it before me and they put it in a pack. You got to be suspicious of that, folks. Like that's some fuckery, right?
Without a doubt. I mean, real food, the way that it should be, doesn't necessarily come in a package. It's wrapped up in a little twist tie thing, and it's got a bunch of leaves on it, and you gotta do the preparation.
I really was blown away the first time I traveled out of the country and for any kind of time and started eating, like going to grocery stores, and I was like, I've never tasted an apple before. I'm like, this tastes way different. Like even just at the best, if we're eating as natural as we can eat in America, it's still probably not very good. Just like with our fertilizer, the way we treat our soils, like all that kind of stuff. And boy, to not be doing it to the best of our ability, it seems like I just had no idea. I had no idea how deep the rabbit hole of nutrition was, I guess is why I asked the question.
Yeah, without a doubt. And so to go back to your question about the progression of it all, I got that idea in my head. Oh, you know what? Like, okay, these are ingredients of food. This real food, and then looking at these different protocols. Like, so I feel like people grab onto a certain diet and it's like almost like their religion.
Right.
Like it is such this thing that's so close to it, and they think everybody else should do that, and I'm more of like, do what works for you. I mean, within reason, if you're eating like,
there's certain things that we know probably aren't so good.
Yeah, well, if you're eating, if you're eating bad and it's affecting your health, it's probably not really working for you.
Right.
But I mean, with regards to just a clean diet or a paleo diet or a vegan diet or a vegetarian diet, or I think it's each to their own, and I think there's pros and cons to each thing. I am, my diet right now is paleo-esque.
Yeah, that's kind of how I go.
Kind of paleo plus. I think the paleo approach has a lot of things really, really spot on. It's eating real food, eating stuff.
It was the first time I really got going, okay, I need to eat good natural food. Like, and out of that, I'm like, okay, maybe you're going too crazy on pineapple. Or what you know what I mean? It's like, and then I started looking at sugar functions and insulin and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, without a doubt, man. So yeah, it's not just. I mean, to simplify it and say, oh, I'm not eating grains, I'm not eating, breads and that sort of thing,
Right.
but I am eating massive amounts of really high sugar fruits. I mean,
Right.
it's still bad for you. So there, I
Right.
mean, you can refine your diet. But I guess my point is, I'm not like militant about any real thing other than
trying to live.
eat real food.
Yep.
Eat real food that makes you feel good. Get lots of freaking vegetables.
Well, I think one of the best things that I did too is try to eat like, well, fuck, what is a paleo diet?
Mm-hmm.
And then I go, okay, well, let's see what it is, like you said, for each individual body. Let's eat that way for a month and a half solid. And not 90%, because 90% means you didn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do it all the way. And so I started looking at those kinds of things, primal diets and paleo diet, zone diet. I went into all these different things and go, let's see what results we get from that. Ketogenic diets, like all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Is your shit different now? Like, so here you are at the highest level you've ever been. Like, this is the best natural born killer anybody's ever seen in the world, right? Is that how you feel right now? Because that's kind of how I feel about you, just from talking to you. I'm like, this is the very best, healthiest Carlos Condit that's ever been.
Yeah, I feel that way.
Now, is it different? Is it different before you started camp, your diet, or do you just kind of tighten up some things and enhance other things because you need more energy diet-wise, things like that?
So kind of my loose rule of thumb is I try to go about 85 to 90% clean when I'm out of camp. So I'm still getting nutritionally dense food.
Right.
I'm still getting the things that my body needs. But if I want some pizza or some chips or a burger here
Right.
and there, not too big of a deal, because I do like that stuff.
Sure.
I love pizza. I mean, that's pizza, salty, savory
Pretty
stuff.
good.
That's my deal.
Where do you go here?
For pizza?
Yeah.
I live right by Farina Alto.
That's where I
up
go.
in the Heights.
Yeah, on
that's
Central.
damn good.
Isn't that right on Central right there?
There's that one, then there's one up in the Heights.
Okay, I've never been to that one.
Yeah.
But they do a gluten-free number that I'm
They-
like, that's...
They do, and it's in the...
I'll have two, thanks.
If
I'm gonna do it, I'm going.
I dig their... Yeah, I like their gluten-free crush. It's just tastier, I think.
It's good.
But then in camp, I will kind of weed that last 10% out and
Right.
really, just pretty much stick 100% to, clean, nutritionally dense foods that are,
And then make you operate and recover well. All that.
Oh yeah, without a doubt, give me good energy. I couldn't imagine if I was eating the way that I did, 10, 12 years
Crazy,
ago,
right? It's
and,
so crazy.
and
Dude,
competing
I look
and
at
training like
athletes
I am
right now, and they do that old school shit. It's like, remember like male amateur athletes, how they used to look like in MMA, and those guys now are like what you saw pros were 5 years ago or 10 years ago, and it's, you don't see, like, everybody's tightening up the game more and more and more, and we were talking on the way up here about Holly. It's hard to not talk about Holly in any conversation that you have anywhere in the world these days right now, right? But I was like, she's always in shape. There's never a time when she's not in shape, and like you're talking about, you're like, I'm always pretty close. Like, I just need to tighten up. And I always was thinking about it. It's like if you spend all this time in camp getting in shape, well, your technical abilities don't really grow. You're really kind of defeating yourself in a way, because there's a guy that is in shape already, and now he's only working on technical aspects and how to defeat your technical aspects, and that's the new wave, I think. That's where guys, I mean, I see Landon Venata go at, like, he lives like that. It's like living that martial arts lifestyle.
Yeah, and I think that there has to be different levels of intensity at different times. So you can't go hard like you're in a full-on training camp year-round.
Right.
And that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about staying in a decent amount of shape, living an active lifestyle. You mentioned Landon. Landon plays a lot, and that's really what
his life is play. Like Little John, same thing.
Yep, physical play. Finding cool things that you like to do that's your brain doesn't perceive as, oh, this is training, this is a grind. No, this is fun. I'm getting my heart rate up. I'm stimulating my neuromuscular system. Everything.
I watch him on. He does these. If you guys look up Landon Venata, he does on Facebook, like, I don't know how often he does it, but he does like here's backflip of the day or acrobatic move, and he's just always like, that's the beautiful thing, is like, he lives a life that promotes him smiling all the time, man. And I really appreciate guys like that being around. I love that.
Without a doubt. And is beneficial on a lot of different levels, man. You know,
Sure.
physically, but also psychologically and emotionally.
Yep.
You know, when we're trapped at a desk and we're just sitting in a, you know, so we sit, we stand, we lay. Those are the motions that we do. We're not meant to do that as human beings. We're meant to do all kinds of things.
Be out.
Yeah, we're run, jump, swim, you know, balance, hang,
That's
carry.
what's so cool too is now everybody, like, you see, like, you know, Cowboy Cerrone in a swimming pool or whatever. Like, that's not happening 10 years ago. It's like, but now everybody's open to all these things, and they're like, I need to get good at life.
Yeah.
Like, this is where I want to be better at life everywhere.
Yeah, and just living that lifestyle makes people more happy. You know, ultimately, I mean, you know, we're trying to be great fighters and all this, but if we're miserable doing it, and sometimes we are, I mean, it's not all fun and games, but we got to love what we're doing.
Yeah. Now, you're outside. Like, who did you look to? Like, so that's like for being the era fighter that you are, which is, it's kind of, I feel like there's different eras. There's like guys that were awesome at one thing and they could win, like a Hoist Gracie or something like that, or a Dan Severn or something, and so they're excellent at that one thing. Or Maury Smith would be of that kind of ilk. You know, he's a great kickboxer. And then there's guys that were good at one thing, but then had to get better at everything because you're going to get exposed otherwise. And now there's guys that are like real MMA athletes that just came up kind of getting a breadth of all of these things and paying attention to them all. And for a guy that's come out of that, like your background, who did you look towards, and what were you thinking of? Like, did you come out of a grappling or I imagine you came out of a striking affinity to begin with. That's the first thing that you saw. Is that right?
Well, I don't know.
So you grew up wrestling. Every kid wrestles. It's a mandatory thing.
I started wrestling when I was 9, but before then, I guess who I looked to was the goddamn Ninja Turtles. You know what I mean?
Right.
I like the early 90s martial arts movies and Jean-Claude Van Damme. So I guess there was some striking that I was influenced by. Where I grew up, there wasn't a whole lot out there, but there's a Taekwondo gym, and I was like, Dad, I want to do Taekwondo. And my dad had been a judo guy and a wrestler.
No kidding.
And he's like, you know what? He's like,
so he was the baddest dude in the Senate, probably. Like, he was like, right? Like, he was like,
he's
like when he says something
dude
in a meeting, other guys are like, well, I guess if he's going to get loud, we're going to go ahead and just go with it.
For sure. Even if he's not going to do anything, he'll make you feel like he is going to do something. But he's like, you know what? I'd rather you wrestle, because if you put, and this is before MMA, this is before UFC, this is when I was a really little kid, before I even knew anything about any of that. My dad's like, here's the thing about Taekwondo and that kind of stuff. You put your hands on those guys, you grab them, you get in close, they can't do anything to you. And that was from his experience, you know, fighting guys in the bars and street fighting and that sort of thing, which, I mean, held true when
he's like, there was a Golden Gloves guy that was going to light me up, and I grabbed him, and that was the end of that.
Yeah, I put him on his head. And so I started wrestling, and then at about 15, I went and I checked out Greg's school, and then I ended up at Tom Vaughn's school.
Yep.
And the cool thing about the what was going on in Albuquerque at the time was there was a bunch of people from a bunch of different martial arts disciplines: wrestling, grappling, kempo, kickboxing, guys from Packard School like Arlene and Mike Winklejohn, and they were all kind of coming together, and there was like this small little alliance for a time, and they were kind of developing what we know now as mixed martial arts, and they were all very good at their individual things, and they were blending this stuff,
all Gaido Jitsu back in the day, right?
Jitsu, exactly. They were blending this stuff before while there was still the one discipline athletes that were fighting in the UFC. You know, this thing was brewing in Albuquerque.
It's almost like guys saw the future, is what I felt like, and they really took like Jeet Kune Do kind of Bruce Lee ideals, like Tom, Arlene, Greg, Mike, Chris Luttrell, like, and all those guys started looking at that and go, we need to put this together
and do it in a practical thing that's gonna, we're gonna get in and we're all gonna spar together in the gym, and it's
we'll find each other's holes. We'll find out what's happening. Like, this is where you're deficient.
Yep, absolutely. Like like a trial and error or survival of the fittest kind of thing. Okay,
Truly.
boom, this technique, this is what you guys have been working on for a decade, but you know what? I do this, I grab a hold of you can't do shit. So
Right.
you either got to change it or adapt.
It's also nice in that way too, because it's back in a lot of those traditional schools. There's kind of this mystique around the leaders, and like that they know magic or something, or you don't really want to really test that. But it created what I feel like there was all those people involved that were all experts at their disciplines, and they came in and there was none of that. There's like, let's just see what works and what doesn't work. And when people come together in that kind of way, it's like everybody gets tested. And it's like, your shit, there's no magic. It better work.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, you pull back the curtain and see what's really going on.
It was an interesting time back then for sure. And I got a lot of background from the Dog Brothers from stick fighting, and it was the same kind of thought process of like, guys would get exposed because they'd get, like your dad would say, they'd get tackled and they'd go to the ground, and it's like, now you're just drowning.
Mm-hmm.
Now you don't know anything. I don't care how tough you were when you could put your feet on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're in a different world. And like hearing old stories like Chris Luttrell when he was a flight attendant, and he'd go to, because there's no jiu-jitsu here, and so he'd travel to Florida or to New York, and he'd go to different schools, and he'd learn an arm lock of this kind or that kind and bring it back, and then it's crazy. It's like crazy learning.
Introduce it into the system.
Yeah.
It's almost like, it reminds me of like Tyler Durden flying around starting fight clubs.
It's true, man.
But instead of starting them, he's learning and then bringing it back to what we got going on here.
That was the beautiful thing about it too, is that you really were encouraged to go ahead. Yeah, go learn over there. There was nothing like you're a traitor to this or that. It's like, go learn everywhere and then bring it back home, and let's see what's new, because we need new flavors. Like that kind of atmosphere where it's like, we need new water to come in or else it'll get stagnant and we'll die of cancer.
Yep.
Like Greg knew that, man. Right? Yep. Like he's a visionary in that way, man. I really appreciate what I've learned from him in that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and there's different times where it hasn't been that way too.
Sure.
And
sure.
And different.
But it's different personalities of
dynamics.
athletes that come out. I think when you went to Arizona and then are back, like that's a huge thing. The way Cowboy does it a lot, I think, is it really speaks to that. Everybody knows whose flag Cowboy carries, but he goes all over to go and get whatever he can, or flies in whoever he can. And
yeah, without a doubt, man. Because ultimately, it's our skulls on the line. I'm stepping out there, and I'm literally I'm putting my health and my well-being, possibly my life, on the line when I'm stepping out here. So people's feelings and sensibilities sometimes got like
you're gonna have to get over that being sensitive.
In the bigger picture, I mean, let's really get down to it. It's got to be what's best for for the fighter, and sometimes that is staying where he's at, and I guess through my experience, I've been around long enough to to look at something and be like, yeah, I don't necessarily need that, or I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time doing that.
And that's the thing I was going to say too. You move differently than other dudes in the gym in a lot of ways that you take. There's protocols that some guys use for training that you're not involved in, and then you're like, no, I'm doing it this way, kind of thing, and that takes a lot of confidence, I think, as an athlete, and not confidence in like ballsy, but like in a thoughtful way where you go, no, this is what is really working for me. You're taking the mystique out of coaching in a way and going, I can self-coach. I've got some good ideas here too, and this is what's working best for me. When did you find yourself taking that departure as a young athlete and going, maybe that's not the best for me to do that right now, and I'm going to do this? Or
I think at different points, when I was younger, I would go to group classes and do that sort of thing on a regular basis. But I also spent a lot of time just on a heavy bag, just by myself, with my gloves and the heavy bag, and just working for hours at a time, and kind of developing, what I was liking, and probably, learning that, muscle memory, and that's kind of a misnomer actually, but the muscle memory of all this stuff.
Why do you say it's a misnomer?
Muscle memory? Well, because it's your muscles don't actually have memory. It's more of your neuromuscular system,
right.
Your brain, your nervous system, and your musculoskeletal system as a whole. It's all kind of like one cohesive system, Right.
I got it. I got it. You're geeking out. And I see. No, but yeah, because there's that whole thing where if you're not moving synergistically through it, like a holistic movement, you're going to be more winded and all that, and just teaching your body how to breathe and move through all those things together.
Yeah, well, and then you're not necessarily going to do the right thing when somebody's trying to crack your skull with their shin bone or something.
Though, like you have trained in that way, if we're going to say muscle memory, like you've trained to be reactive in the correct response is what we're hoping that training has brought, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what do you think about, I feel like I've got stream of consciousness, a fan moment happening, but like, what do you think about like when you're there? Like I always thought about like the way, I look at like the way that I fought, or Keith, or like Isaac is a good one that does that. Like they're real slow starters and go out and like, if you're going to fight Keith that you're going to get worn down. He's like erosion and he's tough and he's going to grind and like slow starters, like Isaac doesn't know he's in a fight until he gets punched in the face kind of thing. Right. And then there's guys that are, I think like you and like probably like Wanderlei Silva, like Diego Sanchez, go out like a buzzsaw right from the beginning and just rip through guys. Do you think that is a trained aspect, or because then you're probably the first guy that I saw that changed your speed and your tempo when you started fighting longer fights. And was that a difficult thing, or is it just a vis-a-vis, I'm going to stick to this game plan now? Like, is there something to turn off to go, don't fucking go out there and like this whole natural born killer, I'm going to grab your neck and choke the fuck out of you, or I'm going to fucking throw a hook and that's going to be the end of this fight. You know what I mean? Do you, because it's a real marked difference if you're looking at that as in an athletic way. It's like, that's a different athlete.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. Some of my fights, I am actually a slow starter. I have some, I have a bunch of first round finishes.
Yeah.
I have a lot of finishes later in the fight. So different fights, sometimes I get in there sleepy. And for me, and I don't know about these other guys that you had mentioned, sometimes, I'm not woken up until I'm punched in the face. And when I wrestled, it was a little bit like that too. I'd always get my ass kicked in the first round, and I'd come back the second or third round and pin the guy. So sometimes I got to get roughed up a little bit. But there's some nights where I'm just on. I feel, I feel just that fire and that intensity to go out there, and I got a guy that's standing across the cage from me. He's going to try to kick the fuck out of me and embarrass me and take everything that I've worked for. And fuck that shit. That's not happening. I'm going to kill him.
Is that backstage preparation? Is that the difference? Or you know what I mean? Like, could you elicit that? Could you make that happen? Or is it just depends on a set of events that you're like, I'm not even sure really what goes into that?
You know what? What I've noticed is fights, pre-fights and fight week, that I'm very nervous and I'm like crawling out of my skin with anxiety. I'm able to turn on that fire big time in the cage or right before, and fights that I'm kind of more chill and I don't kind of have that anxiety, which is great because that's terrible to be
a horrible anxious feeling
just nervous, and crawling out of your skin. It sucks. But when I don't have that, it's harder for me to turn that fire on when it's time. It like converts to that, basically that killer, that killer drive, that killer instinct that I use. Here's the thing, though, with me, no matter how I feel on any given night, I got to go out there and I got to perform to the best of my ability. I'm going to win. I didn't train. Hey, if I step out there and I'm not feeling it and I'm kind of sluggish, it doesn't matter. I didn't put in, 9, 10, 12 weeks to lose because I'm having an off day.
Right.
Fuck that.
It has to be an on day.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even if it's not, I'm still going to
It's going to be.
I'm going to use my my experience or my my technical abilities or whatever it is. Maybe it's not going out there and running over the guy.
That's the thing I guess I'm talking about. Are you thinking about technical abilities or are you thinking about savagery? Because there's a thing, like I go out and I just behave in a savage way where I'm going to rip through a guy. Well, now the thought is maybe my technical aspects go out the window a little bit because I seem like I'm going wild. But I see guys that do that. They do it with a huge amount of efficacy also, and can bring that technical aspect to it. Or you go, no, I'm going to be plotting more technical with it. I don't know if one's better than the other. I mean, I guess in different circumstances, different things.
Well, if you're able to bring the intensity to your technical style, I mean, I guess that's kind of the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
But sometimes maybe you don't have that intensity, or you don't have that fire that night.
So
you got to fake it. You got to go out there and you still got to put that jab out there. And whether you were all fired up, or if you're kind of feeling like shit that day.
Do you have a ritual you go through before every fight? Or is there somebody that you have there? Like, I guess what I started thinking about was like, do you feel like at a certain point, coaching and technical aspects, is that as important as the person being next to you and how that person makes you feel, whether it's calm or whether it's excited or whether, you know what I mean? Like there's different kinds of reasons we have different coaches in our corner.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The coaches that I have in my corner these days are all pretty calm, and they're like, they don't need to get me pumped up. Every once in a while, there was, I remember a fight specifically, that I'm like telling Coach Greg, I'm like, man, I don't feel it tonight. My legs are sluggish. Actually, more than one fight, and then he kind of goes into his motivational speech mode and, gets you fired up, or at least enough to go out there and do what you got to do. And there's other nights where the coach is like, all right, bud, you got a 5-round fight, and I'm losing it backstage. I'm like fired up. I'm screaming. I'm just lit up, and they're trying to keep the lid on it, kind of, tamper it back, tone it down. You got plenty. You're gonna be able to go out there and do what you're gonna do.
Interesting parts to me.
And so there's both, and different nights are different.
That's the craziest thing is like, when you have a perfect showing or something where you're feeling like everything just fired at the right time. It's like, that's the thing, is how do you recreate? And you just can't. They're all fucking different. You can't recreate that
without a doubt. Yeah. And like I said, it's like no matter what, if you stubbed your toe on the way to the ring, or you had, you missed your flight on the way out to the fights, or if you're in a fight with your girlfriend, or you don't speak the language, or they didn't have the right fucking fruit that you like after weigh-ins, or there's always going to be something, and you can't let that stuff throw you off. You have to go out there and do what you got to do and win.
Yeah, and win.
Mm-hmm.
It's the thing. It's like that winning, they say, it becomes a habit, like winning or losing. Either way, you become habitualized to whatever it is that you're attracted to.
Yeah. And, honestly, I say go out there and win. I guess I would rephrase that. For me, it's go out there and fight my ass off.
Sure.
Go out there and fight to the best of my ability.
Who you are.
Winning and losing, for me at this point, of course I want to win, but it's whether I went out there and fought my ass off, because ultimately, like on a deeper level, that's what I'm trying to experience life through, going out and doing physical combat against somebody.
That's your art. That's what I always thought too. Like, man, all these people, they go for different things. Please, that's full right there.
Yeah, I'm doing all right on the caffeine, my man.
I was like less than that, and I'm like, that's powerful. I was like, that becomes the thing, is like everybody's different motivations for why they do it, or whatever, and where it all comes from, and people always go, like, every fight, the worst part of fights really, I think, are people going, who you got, who you think's gonna do this, and I don't even answer. I'm like, I don't know, like literally anything could happen. Is the first truth. And so if you're gonna predict some stuff, it's not really accurate. Like, you're talking about fantasy in a way. You're talking about such, like, having had the, like, when you, and then the other thing is, even after Holly, people were saying, well, like friends of mine that were also fighters, having a rematch for Ronda right away seems silly, because 9 times out of 10, Holly's going to do the same thing to her every time. I'm like, there's only the one time. Like, it's kind of like saying, like, like I got knocked out by a guy I shouldn't have, and I go, and everybody said that to me. They go, 99 out of 100 times that never, and I'm like, yeah, and it makes you feel better for a second, but I'm like, no, 100% of the time that he and I met, he knocked me out. Yeah. That's all that happened. Like, I don't know anything except that everything else is palaver in a way, And so that whole aspect about, like, what happens, why people are there, what drives them into that. All I say is I go, hey man, I just hope that both athletes are able to perform at the best of their ability, to like the best training day they had in the gym. They're able to do that and exact that in that moment under that kind of pressure. And I hope nobody gets really hurt. You know, I don't want to see either of those things go south. And I hope that for everybody, you know. And then if it's my friend, yeah, of course I want them to win, whatever.
Yeah.
But like, it's really secondary to the other thing, because I think there's more important things than that. You know, there's just bigger things at play, and I don't think of it as a good fight or a bad fight. It's just a fight. It's what happened, and it's a great experience that these two guys got to have together. You know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, without a doubt. I guess with regards to like people asking me for predictions, I agree with you. I don't like giving predictions because really anything could happen. And what the hell do I know? I don't know how this guy's training camp went. You know, anything could happen. But what I'll try to do is do like a skill and style breakdown. Okay, this guy, with regards to Holly, people ask me over and over, does Holly even have a chance? And my response was, you know what? Ronda is a tough fight for anybody, but she's never fought somebody with the movement, the movement and the footwork that Holly has. Holly moves like a damn thoroughbred, and you saw it in the fight. Her movement,
the angles.
Ronda was trying to close distance and just could not get close to her. And style wise, sometimes Holly. It drives me nuts watching her fight somebody who's not coming forward on her, because since she's been doing MMA, she's been very cognizant about the takedowns, right? And so she will fight from distance, and I'm like,
and she's super tall, long, and so she can get away with that.
She can, but against somebody who's not really pushing the action,
right,
she's not as effective with her strikes. But with Ronda was coming forward, so it just played right into that game.
No choice either. Yeah, that was kind of the heartbreak you saw of it, because you're like, okay, like I thought for sure second or third strike her jaw's broken because her mouth is just sagging, and I was like, she's not winded. I was like, that's for sure what happened. Which is weird. I don't know why nobody's saying that. But that looks like it to me. And then how tough she is anyway, but then the heartbreak about if I stay out here, she's going to keep touching me with that left hand, which is awful. So I have to come in. She's just committed to coming in to a horrible position, which is close enough for Holly to strike her.
For sure. And I think it showed a little bit of of inexperience in the striking realm on Ronda's part. And not that she doesn't have good boxing, because I've seen her, working on the pads, and her boxing is great.
And it's gone through the roof in the last 2 years.
And it has, but boxing, when somebody's standing right in front of you, is very different from MMA range. MMA range is much different when you're adding kicks and these explosive forward and back movements, and the size of that cage. It makes things quite a bit different. You can't, when you're training somebody, you have to take into account that what we call A range. A range is I can kick you, but just barely. We're at a range where you can't punch me, I can't punch you, and I can make a lot of. If you move in on me, I'm out before you can even get close. Which is really where Holly dominated that fight, in that A range. A range is that kicking range, that distance. B range is boxing range. C range is clinch range, and you have to have mastery of all of them, or you have to know where you want the fight, and you have to be able to get it there.
Whoever owns the distance owns the fight.
Exactly.
Sure. I think that's what George got so good at, and the little beats in between. Like his excellence isn't that he's the best at this, that, but he's the best at marrying those. He's the best at marrying striking to takedown or whatever, and knowing where he wants the fight to be. Very smart in that. I thought with Holly too, to be able to be I was so impressed with Ronda's footwork. And her boxing, I get not her footwork so much, but her boxing was just tremendous. I go, God, she's really risen in the last 18 months or whatever. But that's because it all depends. It all depends who you can look really good on mitts, like you said, or against somebody, or not. And Holly didn't look super sharp when she's hitting mitts when they showed the previews. And Ronda's just like, and you're like, oh my God, it's Godzilla. And then you see what's real, and you're like, oh my Lord, that is a high level striker that knows how to move. And the footwork, you don't really see how good the footwork is until you see what it isn't. And you get those two together, and you're like, oh my God, it's like somebody with a child is what it becomes. And it's like, wow. I was blown away. I couldn't have been more impressed. I mean, and I know a little bit about stuff, and I was just like, I was caught unawares of that. And then the kind of calmness, the kind of where she was just measured and everything was just slow motion, and she didn't get sucked into, I took her down and now I'm going to state none of that stuff. Like everything was
stuck
perfect.
to her game plan
My
to
God.
a T. You know, she's a smart fighter, and she's cornered and coached by very, very smart people.
And I mean, and I was so happy for Mr. Winklejohn too. Somebody that's been with him for, since she's 15 years old.
Yep.
Like, what a beautiful thing.
Yep.
I mean, really, really tremendous. What do you think about the women's in MMA? Like, I always talk about it with people, and I'm like, I'm just not like. The women that do it, like, I know there's a need to do it. There's a hunger in it, and I can see it. But God, I hate seeing a girl get hit in the face. Like, it's a bummer to me. I'm like, God. And I know, like, girls are out there that'll punch me when they see me next. But it's a different thing, man. It's hard. It's hard.
I guess so. You know what? My original trainer,
Arlene,
Arlene Vaughn. I mean, she kind of.
And one of the greatest striking coaches out there, really,
without a doubt, and a great champion, kickboxing champion in her own right. I never really developed like I see warriors out there. I see fighters. I see people who train to do this, and
that's what I see for sure.
Like, whether it's a man or a woman, sometimes I see somebody get hit, and I'm like, oh damn!
Right.
There's that like visceral reaction of, oh damn, that ouch. Yep. Ouch. But I guess it doesn't vary between them, and I've always been a fan of women's MMA, and like I had mentioned, Arlene, she was my original striking coach, man, and she showed, I mean, she was an amazing fighter, she's an amazing coach, and just having come up under her gave me a different perspective on women's fighting.
Right.
I would say.
Right. Do you think that has it been a worry to you without the IVs and all that kind of stuff, or any of that stuff? Do you even look at any of that stuff? Does that even matter to you at all, or is it an inconvenience or any of it? Like,
well, I have not fought or done a weight cut under the IV ban, so I have yet to experience that.
Right, but you'd experienced it before, because IVs just became in vogue in the last 5 years.
Yeah. So. I did used to do my weight cuts and not IV. I have been using IVs for the last couple of years, but I think my body composition has changed quite a bit. My weight cuts have changed.
Just because your age?
Yeah, my age, and the fact, like, that I had mentioned earlier, and that I've stuck to a strength and conditioning program very consistently, really year round for at least the last 5 years.
Yeah.
My diet's changed. I'm not too worried about it. My weight's great right now at this point. Kind of knowing that's on the table, and that I'm not going to be able to use IVs. I'll just be prepared. Yeah, just being prepared.
It's just kind of like another opponent in a way. It's like, oh, this opponent's like this, so I'll have to prepare like this or whatever.
Yeah. Just
it's like everybody's pre-warned.
One more thing I got to deal with, but I'm not too worried about it.
Did things change for you becoming a father? Like all that, like those are huge things. Like, relationships in general for a fighter, I think it's got to be very hard for any woman that's involved with athletes, or for any person rather. Spouse of any kind, because it's different. Your life is different than anybody else's life that you'll ever meet, and then also then to bring in has that affected your thoughts or your training or?
Yes, without a doubt it has. I know a lot of guys
and I don't want to just speak to like the aspect of like, oh, it made it harder, because it's like, I'm sure that she brings in a solace and a comfort and like a real base in that way too. I mean, that is like that other people do not have.
Well, having a son definitely changed things, and it changed things for the better for me. It gave me kind of a newfound motivation. In the years prior to my son being born, my motivation was kind of hit or miss, and then when we had him, I just realized, I'm doing what I love to do for a living. I'm making a great living doing this. I can support my family, and I actually get to spend a lot of time with my family, more so than if I had like a regular 9 to 5. So I'm really fortunate in doing what I'm doing, and to say that I do what I love for a living isn't a lot of people can't say that.
Yep.
And so that he kind of helped highlight that for me.
And it's kind of like it's got to be like oh, this is real. I'm not just out here running and gunning and whatever. It's like, this is real, and he's going to count on me regardless. He doesn't care if I'm tired. He doesn't care if whatever.
Yeah, well, and this is what I'm doing. I didn't go to college. I don't have a trade.
Right.
I'm, this is what I've committed my life to. And now
Have you ever had a real job?
I will define real job.
Like you're talking about then you're like, if you're like regular teenager, you're like, I painted houses in the summertime and I raked the yard but it's like,
so I
worked at the gas station for a minute.
Did
you ever try to be like, I'm gonna be a regular dude and I'm gonna just be a carpenter. I'll hang drywall or anything like that?
Well, that was always kind of a backup plan. I come from a couple generations of electricians.
Yeah.
So that was always kind of a backup plan. 2 summers I was a lifeguard at the beach here.
Watching girls.
The local water park. I worked for a long time as a security guard as a bouncer at a music venue.
Right, yeah.
I did that. I had like an office job. I was like an intern at the Department of Labor there for a little while, like my only ever office job, which was interesting.
It's gonna be weird.
Yeah.
How is that?
You know what?
Like just even the energy of the people that you're around. Like here I am around these people. They're living a very different life than what's inside my soul wanting to get expressed.
I think I was like 17 years old and I was an intern, so they didn't hold me to a very high standard. Like I had my own cubicle and I was supposed to be sorting papers and I'd be back there drawing and doing, designing.
They'd accept that he's not going to get much done.
Yeah, and taking 2-hour breaks in the cafe downstairs that had amazing quesadillas, and they kind of just they didn't expect a whole lot out of me. In fact, I figured once my internship was up, they'd be like, okay, take care. They offered me a full-time position. I'm like, really? I've been the worst.
They're like, for a state worker, you're awesome.
Exactly. I think that kind of sets the bar.
It really
pretty
is something,
low.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
I know. They're like, well, we like you, and it's more than we can say about most people in the office. Go ahead.
Right.
Here's a pension.
Yeah. So I guess I had a couple of quote unquote real jobs. I also was a courier. I drove payroll for a while.
Right.
I think that was my last real job.
Was that into the UFC or into WEC? WEC was the last time you were like, this is what I'm doing full time.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I think when I was driving payroll, I was still fighting in Pancrase, and then right after Pancrase, it was WEC.
Pancrase, not a lot of guys, man. You, Nate Marquardt. There's not a ton of guys that are around. Josh Barnett maybe fought in Pancrase, I think, for a while. Mm-hmm. Not a lot of guys active that fought in Pancrase. That's some old school shit.
Yep. I enjoyed the hell out of it.
Open palm, or were you punching?
No, it was close fist.
Yep, okay.
Close fist.
Because that changed. It used to be just slaps, right?
Yep. So and then there was no elbows, but you could soccer kick and stomp a grounded opponent.
Damn.
Yeah. I got to show you a video.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy, the different rules. Like, we want you to be the most savage, but here's the parameters. You can't step out of these bounds. Like, of course somebody's going to throw an errant knee sometime or another,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
What do you think about that, though, when you're a downed opponent? You can't kick or knee to the down. Like, I saw that with, you see guys save themselves, I think that they got to take that away. Like, you shouldn't have – that's like a false sense of security that they give guys. Like, you're completely open. And you're not defending yourself. You're defending yourself by being in a position that allows a guy to not strike you.
The hand on the ground thing, and then when guys play hands on the ground, no, it's not. Up and down.
Yeah.
Actually, a lot of refs will be like, no, if you're playing that game and he needs you in the head, I'm not going to do anything about it.
That's great. I think that's right.
Yeah.
You can't be on all you got to be prepared. If they're going to take, I think strikes to the back of the head too. I feel like that's a silly rule in a way. Mm-hmm. It's like. That's the end of the fight then, is also what it's called. I can't hide on my stomach.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing?
Yeah. I guess I have some mixed feelings on it. Like, from one side of me is like, I'd love soccer kicks and head kicks and all that. it would change the pace of the fight, change the dynamic of a lot of these different wrestling scrambles and these exchanges up against the cage. But from like a long-term health standpoint, adding more devastating strikes to the head.
None of it's good, Carlos. None of it's good, buddy.
That's true. But I guess there's
how many guys have you seen get knocked out by just getting double-legged and slammed hard?
Yeah.
I've seen guys shook like that.
Or knock themselves out, taking somebody out. Yeah.
I mean, it all happens. None of it's...
There's all that. I
don't think that we can err on making it so-called safer.
Yeah, but we could definitely make it more dangerous.
Yeah. I think it's a weird thing, the elbow thing, like when like Japan didn't like it, they're like, it stops the fights because they're superficial cuts and all that. But like then you see like that John Jones elbow who was it? Brendan Vera. Mm-hmm. And he blew his whole from the guard. Like those, I don't know, John's long as hell, I guess. But to get that elbow around, and he blew his whole orbital bone out. And I was like, that you can't say that's a superficial cut. Like there's guys that know how to throw elbows that's devastating. I was like you and Brand. That's one of my favorite videos to watch. You and Brandon Gibson when you're hitting a bunch of elbows and cycling through. Like I'm like, God damn, that's beautiful.
Yeah, the elbow flow. I love elbows, especially as a lanky guy. Sometimes, if I'm in boxing exchanges, a guy with shorter arms kind of has a little bit of an advantage, right? Especially closer, maybe in boxing range. But if I, half my arm and I hit you with the pointy part of it, that doesn't have a glove on, it's a different kind of a thing.
What do you think of guys that just want to box with you? They come into the gym and they're just like, today I'm just going to box and everything, and because they're really good boxers, but maybe they're not kickboxers and they want to take away your weapons.
That's cool though. I mean, it's just a chance for me to work on one specific thing. I actually do like working specific things. Like I'll go down and roll with the Gracie guys and I'll only do jiu-jitsu. Right. Yeah. If we were striking, these different positions would be quite a bit different. But I'm working on this specific thing right now. So it's the same with boxing.
Like Danny or any like Romero or any of those guys.
I have worked with Danny. Yeah.
He's great, man.
Yeah, love Danny.
Like Keith can't speak highly enough. Like he's the way that changed to work on that specificity changes. He's like, God, I didn't know what, like that thing, like to a martial artist like him, where he's like, I didn't know what I didn't know about striking. Like he just opened up a whole new world. Those guys that have been just watching, it's that thing about being with good trainers, I think, and whatever the discipline is you're doing. But like, he's like, Pops can go, here's why your hook sucks. Move your foot 15 degrees. And it's like they've seen 100,000 bodies make the same mistake, and they fixed, they just have an eye for it. Like that good coaching, man.
Yeah. Well, and especially somebody who is specifically focused on boxing. They have that eye, as opposed to an MMA guy. Sometimes there's so much stuff going on that we'll miss those small little details. We're chaining combinations together with takedowns to ground and pound to submission, and sometimes these little minute details can be overlooked.
Do you feel the same way about sparring as you always did? Like, do you spar hard anymore, or do you not?
No. So when I was a kid,
because they're always like kind of like who are the only guys like shoot box, like they just get it all the time, and like that's how guys would train. They're like, that's good training.
Yeah.
It's not really seen that way anymore.
Yeah, well, so when I first started training and they were like, hey, you can come in and you can put gloves on and fight all the time. I'm like, hell yeah. I get to fight all the time. This is what I love to do. Fuck yeah, we're going to go fight. But as I got older, especially in the last couple of years, I don't necessarily see, hard sparring where you're just beating the shit out of each other as necessarily advantageous. I think that it can be detrimental. I mean, if you're trying to train your brain to do these complex, neuromuscular sequences, and you're also smashing the wrinkles out of it every time you're practicing, it's a little bit counterproductive.
Right.
So I think early on, if somebody's like, "Hey, I want to be a fighter. I'm going to train to do this," and then if you never sparred and you put all this time into it, and then you step out there and the first time you get punched in the nose, you're like, I'm one of these people.
You got to find out you're tough.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that there's definitely a time and a purpose for hard sparring. But dude, I've had 40 plus professional fights between MMA and kickboxing. I know how to fight.
Right.
I know what it feels like to get hit.
You already know you're not going to quit. I think that's one of the things about sparring is like when the going gets tough, I'm going to hang in there. Like that's what it shows us, right?
For sure. And I think that there's other ways. There's lighter sparring. When I'm sparring these days, it's more like tag.
Do you pick your guys?
I do. Yeah. I do.
You kind of have to.
I do, especially at Jackson's, we have that dynamic of different people coming in all the time.
Right.
And you never know. Somebody might just be coming in and like, oh, hey, there's Carlos Cana. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to make a name for myself, and I'm going to post it on my Twitter that I went out and
banged with him and
clubbed him
or whatever,
or hit him with a spinning back kick right in the jaw or something like that. I got to be careful.
Sure.
I got a career.
There's
I got
a lot at stake.
There's a lot at stake without a doubt. So I do kind of pick and choose who I'm sparring with because it has to serve a purpose.
Right.
Sparring just for the sake of sparring, I've done plenty of that, and I love doing it. But anymore, I mean, if I get injured,
the consequences are too steep.
Yep.
I mean, if you've got a legitimate enough chance to get hurt. Going against guys that love you and that are your pals, let alone somebody that's like just comes into the country or just comes in from wherever and is like you said, I mean, I talked to Keith about that. He's like, guys would love to be able to fucking say I tapped Keith Jardine or whatever. Like there's those guys that are the tough gym guys that want to see, how good do I do against the best guy in the world? That means I'm good. It's kind of like at a grappling tournament and they're like, well, yeah, I lost the first round, but it was to the guy that won. And it's like, that doesn't make you the second winner. That makes you the first guy that lost, and that's it. That's not like it's that kind of that's what I always liked about the gym too, is the fellowship of that like anybody that talks outside of what happens in the gym gets smacked. Yeah. It's like there's not gossip about like how training went.
Yeah.
It's so nice, man. It's just free.
Yeah. Yeah. You can go in there and
I don't know that every gym's like that.
Yeah.
But I know that it's like that at Greg's, and that's what I really always appreciated.
It is. And, part of that is, if I'm in training camp, I'm training, 5 to 6 days a week. And, Monday I might look crisp.
2 and 3 days a week or a day sometimes?
Without a doubt. Sometimes 4. Monday I look crisp. Thursday I might look
it's
like
a different
shit.
guy.
And if somebody gets the better of me on Thursday, I mean, I've done 10 times more practices than that person has. So it doesn't necessarily mean they can beat me.
Sure.
So
it's weird how it always comes down to that, right?
Yeah.
That's what I always think as a trip about other sports when you watch basketball or football or something. I'm like, right when it starts to get good, they blow the whistle, and then these two huge guys are listening to this little skinny guy with the whistle. Like it's like it's never really like and everybody like all the bragging rights of I'm fucking this guy up or whatever. It's like shooting 3-pointers. Got it. Like when you take it to the mat, it's different.
Yeah.
That's a I think it's a huge distinction with fight gyms, with real fight gyms, and then like with like I don't know how else, like a hobbyist gym or something like that. It's like there's just different things at stake, and man, people are trying different things. I remember every time I thought I was doing well with like Keith or something, I was like, this feels really good. Like he's just working on this one combination. You know what I mean? It's like I never had any kind of real like illusions about what was going on. It's like he's working on specific things.
The gym is kind of a laboratory. It's
right,
not
exactly,
it's not real world situations. I mean, it can be, but you're in there developing certain things. A great example is, have you ever seen old footage of Muhammad Ali sparring? Muhammad Ali, when he sparred, he didn't look very good. Man, they would have all these press people, around the ring
to impress and all that.
Filming him, and he'd be in there getting his ass kicked. But really, he was working on, or so he said, he was working on specific things, working on that rope-a-dope, working on these weaknesses, and the dude was getting the better of him. But that training session or that sparring session wasn't what mattered. It mattered when he was out there under the bright lights, and it was really time to go. That's game night, being a game day player. That's where it matters. It doesn't matter.
Do you
in
want
the
to be
gym.
tough in the gym, or do you want to be tough for real?
Yeah,
and that's the thing about like that I always appreciated was like the ego deflation that it offers is that that it's like you're going to have to give up something. You're going to have to give up. You can't win every day in the gym if you're going to want to win on game day kind of thing. Or, I mean, maybe you can, but it's like there's going to be allowances you make. Like you're going to let a guy, if you're just going to work on slipping punches, you're going to let a guy throw punches at you that he wouldn't normally be able to throw because you'd be attacking or whatever. All these variants that go into it. And it's a beautiful thing to be able to go ahead and go, this guy's going to feel that way. However he feels about it is fine.
It's fine, yeah.
You know?
A guy that really kind of highlighted that for me is I worked a couple camps with an Olympic wrestler named Jake Herbert. Just a great dude. He competed in London, the 2012 Olympics. He's going for the Olympics here in 2016. This last year he had a couple of really, really great wins over some top level guys. And he would always tell me, I have absolutely zero practice pride. I have zero practice pride. These guys can come out here and kick my ass all they want because it really doesn't matter. I'll go out there.
What a mature thing to know.
I will step out there with these guys when it's game day, and I'll whoop their asses. And I kind of, and it's hard. It's hard to check your ego. Like, oh, wait a minute, I'm the man. This kid's an amateur, and he just caught me with a punch. I'm gonna get upset about it. But, hearing him say that, a guy at such a high level, it's like, oh, you know what? There's something to that.
It's huge, man.
Yeah.
I mean, that's huge. It's such a testimonial, like with martial arts and with maturity and like looking at like what that looks like. It's like, it looks like that. It looks like knowing who you are, regardless of what the circumstances of going on are, you know, like, and like, that's a beautiful thing, man.
That's the difference between ego and self-esteem.
Say more.
Ego is how you feel about yourself based on outside influences. Self-esteem is how you feel about yourself based on what you know.
Like about, a real self-knowledge.
Yeah, like a real self-knowledge. Yeah.
Yeah. It's beautiful, man. And that's the kind of stuff that you don't find out from anybody in particular. It's like you go through the processes of going through all the feelings and like it's just time. It's not in a book. It's not coaching. It's none of it.
And you can find that through different paths. You can find that sitting there meditating on a rock in a mountain at a Buddhist monastery, or you can find that out, biting down on your mouthpiece and throwing down while you're bleeding from several different lacerations.
Try to find the calm in that.
There's more than one path to enlightenment.
I think I love. We were talking earlier and about whether it's musicians or whether it's somebody that is a beautiful sculptor or like anybody that's achieved excellence or mastery in something. That's why it's so important, I think, to look towards that mastery of like and I think of yourself in all those ways. Like all of it leads back to that self, that you have conversation with anybody then that is also an expert at what they're doing, whatever that is, because you've all traveled the same road to a different spot, kind of.
Yeah, and there's so many parallels between the paths. And I mean, you could be talking about totally different fields that have no relation, but the people have similar. Similar psychological skill sets and similar, similar makeups that the people that make it to the highest level of whatever it is, whether, like you said, whether it's sculpting or basketball or
comedy or
business,
whatever.
When
you I thought this was interesting. It surprised me. I download podcasts like periodically before I go on a plane or something. And then I go, oh, cool, Carlos is talking with Brendan. And I go, oh, fucking Robbie Lawler's there too. I go, that's weird. Because you don't really ever see that except on like fight week when you're like forced to be around the opponent. As like I was shocked by it because I'm like, it's way out of the ordinary. And how'd that all occur? And was that odd? Like, here's two fucking super mellow guys. They're just, hey, well, yeah, no, this like, it was kind of surreal.
Actually, that was the first time that I've ever done that, and it happened. It was the whole time we were on that media tour. It was him and I in studio together.
Weird.
Doing a bunch of different radio shows, doing Brendan Schaub's show. It was.
You guys go have lunch afterwards after any of the times or anything like that, or just out the door to separate cars and that's it?
To separate cars. We were only around each other when we were actually, talking. But we were doing like these these kind of morning shows, these entertainment radio shows, and they were kind of weirded out. They were like they were kind of freaked out. These are people who aren't really around fighters on a regular basis. Like, oh my god,
yeah, having one of you guys there would be enough. But then they're gonna explode into each other on a certain day in the future. Oh my god,
are these two gonna fight? So they made it fun. So we did things like we played Rock'em Sock'em Robots against each other,
killer.
And we played Operation, and we did a trivia game against each other, and stuff like that, which was cool. Robbie's a laid back dude. He's a professional. He's been around for a long time.
I love a lot of the way he talks about fighting. I love listening to that guy.
Yeah,
he's it's that kind of thing. I think that unless you have the distance and the time into it, you don't have the scope for it like that that a lot of you guys do. It takes all that time. But like Robbie's one of the first guys that really got outspoken about like, why would I spar? I already know I'm tough. Like what I just work pads and I'm trying to work angles and like it. I was like, that guy makes sense.
Yeah.
But then there's all the superstitions that go into it. I remember like talking to Ike about it. I'm like, dude, you really shouldn't spar the way you do. I know how you train. You're retarded. Like, and if there's any retards listening, I got in trouble for saying that. I don't mean it that way. There's a lot of different words. Like, he's retarded in his growth athletically, and it's retarding his brain power later. But like, it's like that kind of thing. You get superstitious about like, I need to feel like this after training, right? Because success doesn't always feel like you're completely spent. Like there's all those things about like, when do you withhold? Like I remember the first time ever getting told to take a day off, and Keith calls, what are you doing? Oh, I'm just laying here and I'm gonna go and hit mitts a little bit later. He's like, no, the day off. Like, don't do anything. Like, and like, like you as an athlete, there's a long time I think where you feel like the more I do, the better the payoff will be, and that's just not true.
Oh yeah, definitely. More is not always better.
Right.
And it is a constant. It's a
battle.
It's a constant battle, man. I'm a racehorse. I want to run. But a racehorse's coach doesn't let him go and get it and book it as fast as they do. Let them run 30%, let them run 40%, let them run 70%, and then rest them, because going too hard, too much, too intense is detrimental. It's not good. The way that I'm training these days, man, we're getting kind of fancy with it. We're doing this stuff. I don't know if you're familiar with Omega Wave. Omega Wave is this system that it's this I guess sports physiological monitoring system where you put a couple of pads on, put a deal that looks like a heart rate monitor, but it's actually a ECG, echocardiogram. I think that's what it is. And it looks at your heart rate variability, your central nervous system activity, and a couple of other different biofeedback patterns. And there's correlation between them and your performance and how you're going to adapt to your next thing. So it'll basically give you. It'll get. Dude, I'll bring it in next time.
Where can you find out more about it?
I think it's just probably just Google Omega Wave, and they.
So it talks about how to optimize
your training, and basically I'll do this thing. It takes maybe about 4 or 5 minutes. Put a couple of sticky pads on my head, lay still for a while, which is hard for me because I'm a fidgety kind of a guy, and I always got dogs barking. It's supposed to be quiet at your house, and it never is because I got a 5-year-old.
So this is not during work. This is during your rest time, like when you wake up in the morning.
When you wake up in the morning, you're supposed to get up, move around a little bit, and then do the test. And the really cool thing is it'll send all your information to your coach. So my strength and conditioning coach
snitches you out.
It shows him. He's like, okay, look, you're greenlit for endurance. So we're gonna kind of modify your workout today.
Dope.
And and they can. There's a bunch of it. And
so it talks about what all your physiological levels are at, so like you don't overtrain
exactly.
Wow.
And they can optimize what you're doing. And so I think there's a lot of value in that. It's a cool tool. There's the other side of the spectrum where we're just going hard and you're gonna tough through it, and you're just gonna like the harder you go, the better. And I think finding the balance between the two. I'm not 100% on the science side. I'm not 100% on this other side. But let's find the happy. For me, I got to find the happy medium between the two, because I am that guy.
Yeah. The other thing is it speaks to your confidence too. Like people that maybe don't understand or haven't put themselves in those kind of extreme conditions, going that hard on the one side where you're like, I'm just gonna fucking grind it till I'm steel on steel and fuck it. Like that increases that like that biological savagery where you're like, fucking nobody's touching this kind of thing. Whereas this other side might not speak to that, but maybe you get stronger, and so like that happy medium's got to be something in there.
Yeah, well, I feel like there's a time for everything, and having done this the last couple camps, it shows me intensity's great, but not all the time.
Right.
Like you have to.
It's not sustainable.
Yeah, it's not sustainable, and it's actually detrimental. There's guys that have been using this, and they've come into a camp in better shape than when they went out, because they went so hard, so intense throughout their training camp. They're actually more they're more
depleted at that
depleted and diminished, and like even on like a mitochondrial level, your mitochondria's ability to create ATP and energy for your muscles to function is diminished if you are overdoing the intensity.
Yeah.
And so kind of periodizing. I don't know.
Periodizing.
Yeah, there you go.
Periodization.
Yeah,
of the intensity versus.
Yeah, and doing different things at different times. And we have a specific date. We know we want to be strong, fast, quick, agile, with endurance and power, everything at this certain time. So we go through this certain, these certain regimens. So we're not doing all of it all the time. Right. We're like, okay, I'm way out from a fight. I'm gonna lift, just hit a couple of reps and then take a two minute break, and I'm gonna,
But you also, as a 30-year-old fighter, are different than as a 19-year-old. Like it's like that whole thing. Like what I think is super interesting about like you and Diego in particular is like you've gone through these things. Not as easy to make a weight cut when you're when you get older. Like they don't come easier and easier, and so your training has to be different. And then if you're gonna go balls to the wall in your training, that's great if all your physiological juices are working at optimized level like they are in your early 20s. But now you're 28 or 32 or whatever. Well, shit's a little different now, and so like you're not going to recover at the same rate that a 23-year-old does. And so I think this really is beautiful, man.
Absolutely. So not every athlete is different. Different guys are different body types. Really utilize different energy systems. More so than others, right? So like there's these, like the more compact, explosive guys are really, they're more heavily kind of ATP. There's just that fast burst. Energy system, as opposed to like a long, lanky guy who, man, I can get up to, I can go in an oxidative state for a really, really long time.
Right.
And I don't have as much of that. I'm not that explosive guy. Of course I'm training to be, to have that ability, but really I'm not. That's not
the pathway you live in.
Yeah. That's not
and nobody can keep that up. You look at like a Tyrone Woodley or something like that. It's like, yeah, you're awesome.
He bursts
for 5 minutes.
He bursts and then he rests, and then he bursts and then he rests.
It's not going to be great if you can't keep that up. Yeah. Like that's,
Yeah, and so training different athletes, to optimize their abilities and improve where they're weak and increase where they're strong is, it takes somebody with a lot of knowledge.
Yeah,
rad,
man. Well, I want to go eat. Let's go do that. And you got any sponsors or anything you need to say hello to?
No, not necessarily.
Who taught you about Omega Wave?
I train at Elevate Performance Health and Wellness here in Albuquerque.
Yep.
They got me hooked up with Omega Wave. Omega Wave was kind enough to donate, or sponsor me the equipment, and they're helping in the monitoring of my progress and what's going on with me. So that's extremely beneficial. You know what? And I want to thank my fans, man. I have so much support from people from all corners of the globe, and it's an amazing thing to do what I love for a living, but also to have people recognize that and inspired by it, and training camps are tough, and sometimes that pushes me through.
Yeah, you must get a ton of letters and tweets and all that of encouragement and all that.
Quite a bit, man, and I can't get back to everybody, but I just want everybody to know that I am eternally grateful for it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a crazy thing, the reach that all that has. Like as a combat athlete, you're accessible in a way that, like, if you're playing for the Bulls or something, those guys aren't like they're not accessible in that way. It's like it's the only sport where fans really are in collusion and can touch and interact with their heroes in this way. It's a fucking cool thing to be a part of. Really, it's the coolest sport in that way. Like, if you love a race car driver, good luck. You're never going to see Mario Andretti or whatever. You know what I mean? But like this is a whole different thing. It's a whole different animal that is so cool, I think, in that way.
Yeah, and that's why I think that's part of the growth and the popularity of the sport. People can relate to these fighters, and they can, they're not. I mean, I guess they do kind of hold fighters up on a pedestal to an extent, but we're also more accessible, like you said.
What? Where'd you get? Was it because you watched Woody Harrelson in Natural Born Killers that you? Where'd the name come from?
Yeah, pretty much. They filmed that, like, a lot of it here in Albuquerque.
You had a really dark relationship with a girl, and you're like, we could be this, babe.
Mickey and Mallory, babe.
I just made that up. I don't know anything.
No, I liked it. I actually wanted a fight team called the Natural Born Killers.
That's pretty dope.
And then I didn't have a.
You know what that is? That's the wrestling team that you sponsor when your kid starts wrestling.
There we go. Yeah, or the fight team that I bring up when I'm done fighting or whatever. But I didn't have a name, and at the time I was like 12-0 with 12 knockouts in the first round, and I was this clean-cut kid, kind of didn't look like much, but I was just had that natural
like
killer
a real life
instinct.
Dexter. Well, man, it's a privilege, man. I really enjoyed it, and thanks for making the time, and we'll talk again soon. And I can't wait to watch the fight, man. I want to go to that one for sure.
Yeah, dude. Thanks for having me. It's been a blast.
Absolutely.